So hi and welcome to another review, and today we're checking out the Endgame Gear mousepad here, the MPC 450. Now if you're not familiar with my channel, I'm going to give you all the data and statistics here to give you the competitive edge over your rivals in games here. I'm going to do that because we're going to use things like glide tests, using the force gauge meter and incline meter here as well for testing the friction. We're going to be using an FK2 mouse here for the glide test, as well as a new weighted one, which people have been asking me for, to allow us to see how much friction there is and how easy these are to glide, which will allow us to gauge the pad, whether it's a speed pad or a control pad. So starting here with the price, well, Endgame Gear are letting this go for around 19 UK pounds or 20 euros, for around 20 US dollars, which is a very good starting price here. Endgame Gear were good enough to send me this one out here to review for you guys, so we can see how it performs against the rest of them. So out of the packaging here, one good thing to see is it comes flat packed here. It's not rolled up at all, which is good to see straight off the bat here. You don't have to wait for this to lie flat. And you're not going to have any annoying ripples in it here if it never lies flat. This is always flat out of the box, which is good to see here. Good start. For the material, it's using something called cord, which is like a nylon material here. It's also got a rubber back to stop it from slipping around. The firmness of it, I would say, is around medium here. It's not rock hard, but it's not soft either. It is waterproof here. As you can see, the water just lies on top of it. So if you're having to spill something or you've got a bit of a sweaty arm, this should repel it, stop the sweat soaking into the pad, slowing it down. This is the MP450, so it's 450mm in width. They also do a 890mm in width, and they also do a 1200mm in width. This is a nice smooth surface here. I expect it to be quite rough, but it isn't here. It's not like the MP510 that I find a little bit ridgy. It's also got a stitched edge, which I'm not really a fan of here. One of the only things that I could really get a bit of a gripe on here with Endgame is that they've put two logos on it. You've got one in the top right hand corner, which is massive. It also changes the texture of the pad here. It's like a rubber silicone on top of it or something like that. And then you've also got on the left hand side in the top corner that I use a label, which is a little bit annoying here. On the bigger pads, this might not cause you as much of an issue, but on this 450, it's certainly taking up some of the top real estate here, which is a bit of a shame. So if we're getting into the glide test here, let's check the dimensions out. So I measured this. It comes in at 450mm of usable surface. There's an extra few mil on the edge here for the stitched edge. The height of it comes in at 400mm again. Usable surface. A little bit of the stitch edge also accounts for some further millimeters here, and it comes in at 3mm in depth, which is great. It's a nice thin bed, which is exactly what I like. For me, these dimensions are spot on. I generally only use probably a third of the pads that are around 400, but I do prefer having the extra space when I need to really move around here. So for me, the 450 MPC here is the perfect size for me. If you want to use an extended pad, I'd probably go with the 1200mm one. So starting off the glide test here, we've done a few different glide tests here. We're still using the one with the cable, so you can go back and review my older tests, compare the speed. We've now got an FK2 without a cable because people were concerned the cable was causing some additional friction. And I've also created a base here that you can see, which has got hyperglides on it. It's also using some additional weight here. I've made the weight up to 300 grams in weight. I've also weighed my hand on the scales here to try and get that gauged. It's a bit of a gamble here. We all apply different pressure, but we're going to use this 300 here as the benchmark, and we'll see whether that also makes a difference in the glide speed here. So moving on to the glide test here, and with a cable, the first test came with an NSW average of 18 grams, an NFW of 26 grams, RSW of 17 grams, and an RFW of 24 grams. This gave the pad an average glide of 22 grams. This puts it just behind the MP500, that was 21 grams. Puts it on par with the MP510, which is 22 grams, which makes it a fast cloth pad here. These are definitely up there in the speed rating here. So moving on to the glide test here with no cable. The NSW was 18 grams, NFW was 24 grams, RSW was 16 grams, and RFW was 19 grams. This gave it an average of 20 grams here, so that's 2 grams different to with a cable. Not as a big a difference as I had expected to see here. We can't really gauge this against anything else here at the minute because we haven't done those tests yet, but we'll get that data as we go forward, and then you can compare it a lot better. Then moving on to the glide test here with the weighted base here. The NSW was 61 grams, NFW 62 grams, RSW 53 grams, RFW 54 grams. This gave it an average glide of 58 grams here. Again, we haven't got anything to compare it against at the minute, but we will do going forward, don't we? I have a lot of pads to compare here. So moving on to one of the newer tests here, which is the friction or angle test here to see when the mouse breaks away on the pad here. It gives a better idea of what friction the pad's giving. NSW, the average was 11 degrees. On the NFW, the average was 11 degrees. On the RSW, the average was 6 degrees, and on the RFW, the average was 7 degrees. This gives the pad an average of 9 degrees. The only pad we can compare this to at the moment is the AMP 500. That was tested last week, and that came with an average of 11 degrees. Therefore, it looks like the Endgame gear here has slightly less friction than the AMP 500. It's going to be interesting to see how these play out across all the pads here, so starting to see some results. I need to keep on it and get some more down, but they are coming, don't worry. So the angle glide test with the weighted base here, the NSW average was 12 degrees, NFW average was 9 degrees, RSW was 6 degrees, and RFW was 4 degrees here. That gives it an average of 8 degrees here. Again, keeping it very similar to the one without the weight involved. But at the moment, we've got nothing to compare it against. What we can do is look at the one with the weighted base, and they are still very, very similar here. About 1 degree difference. So stopping power, a lot of people ask about on mice pads. This one to me has got quite low stopping power. It's a very fast pad. I prefer that. Actually, I use the Helios at the minute, which I'm testing for some wear. So for me, it's got low stopping power at the minute. One of the tests we're doing at the moment is movement. So how does the pad stick to the surface? Obviously, everyone's desk is slightly different here. I'm using a coated wood desk here. It's a plastic coating on it. And the amount of force it took to move the Endgame gear here pad was 360 grams, which is pretty high here. That's a lot of pressure. So you're not going to find this pad moving around. I didn't find it when I was gaming on it. It didn't move one bit, which is good to see as well. So my conclusion here, well, this looks to be a great pad from Endgame gear here. I certainly was impressed when I put it out of the packet. Didn't really expect much, thought it'd be quite thick. Thought I wouldn't like the texture here, but actually I like both the thickness and I do like the texture of it. The one problem with it is the logos. Endgame gear do understand that. I've spoken to them. And I agree they probably shouldn't have done it on this pad. I don't know why companies are doing that because it could get in the way of people. I'm certainly going to cut the label off this if I want to use it because it's in my way, definitely in the top left corner. But it's a good price, this pad, so it's certainly competitive here at 19 UK pounds. This is put into the average price range here, and this is a decent pad. This is, for me, worth the 19 quid. It comes flat packed, which is unusual. The only ones I've seen that actually do that, other than this one, are the Artisan pads. So that's a great touch here from Endgame. They've realised people don't want the pads to come rolled, which a load of manufacturers do, maybe to save space, but Endgame gear have realised that, so out the box this thing is dead flat, which is good to see. If I was going to pick this and the MP510, which one would I have? I would have this one all the time because I don't like the texture of the MP510. It's a fast pad, but it's a bit rough. It's also got a very, very big stitched edge on it, which gets in the way, which this one doesn't. So overall, do I recommend this pad? Definitely. Do we know how it's going to wear? No, that's one of the things I'm trying to get more involved in with certain pads, but it's probably the only thing I'm not sure about here is how well it's going to wear. It feels like it's going to wear well. It's certainly a rugged material. We'll just have to see in the future how these pan out. Overall, I recommend this pad. Good price, good pad. Check it out, definitely, for sure. So thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying these videos. Check out the AMP 500 review that I've done. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. And I'll see you again very soon. Catch you later.